Okay, so a little bit more detail about your annotations and how you should write them. So they should be about 5 to 7 sentences long, and they need to discuss who the authors are, what the article is about, how it informs your research or topic, a quote from the article, and then a nice sentence that wraps it up. So they should look something like this, and I'm going to write this from the example and explain as I write it. So first you'll put your citation. So we can put Drury, John, creating poetry, and then you would have all of your citation detail after that. And we won't worry about trying to put that in here. I'll just kind of do this number just so you know that you would put publisher, date, whatever. That would all be here. And if you come down here, I'll show you how to do the hanging indent. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give some spacing, like these are words. All right, so if I'm going to do the hanging indent, I'm hitting the delete button, then I'm hitting return and tab, and that gives me my hanging indent. Okay, so coming down here, I'm going to leave the indentation, and I'm just going to start writing. So first, what I have to do is I have to introduce the author. So I'm going to say John Drury, in his book, Creating Poetry. And then I'm going to begin to tell you what the book or the article is about. So he discusses various techniques on creating and revising poems for young poets. Okay, so this is John Drury. He's the author. Okay, so I've done the first thing, and I'm starting to do the second thing, what the article is about. And in my example, I keep going. I start talking a little bit more in depth about the text. So I say the text largely focuses on techniques and qualities of poetry, ranging from imagery and tone to form and precision of language. Drury also includes example poems and techniques on how to revise poems from their initial drafts. All right, so what I've done here, let me move this down just a tad. So I've got John Drury in his book Creating Poetry. Okay, so that is essentially who the author is. This is who the author is, this is what he's written, and then everything else is me talking about what the book or the article is about. Okay, so I briefly go through, he talks about techniques on creating and revising poems. That's a very broad general summary. And then in my next sentence, I get a little bit more in depth and focused on what I'm largely saying. So what kind of techniques does he do? How does he teach revising poems? Well, he focuses on techniques, qualities of poetry. I give you sort of a range, and then I also give you how he wraps up the book with example poems and techniques on revision. So when you are writing your annotations, it's good to kind of broadly summarize for your first or second sentence, and then get a little bit more in depth with exactly how they're doing that. So if your article is talking about how devastating Hurricane Camille was in 1969. That's a really good broad summary. How do they talk about it? Do they talk about it in terms of finance? Do they talk about it in terms of like physical destruction? Do they talk about it in terms of lives lost? Or do they do a little bit of all three? Get a little bit more in depth with that. And that'll be like your second or third sentence. And so after this, I start going into the next thing that I have to do. How does it inform my research or my topic? So going back to my example, this book is essential, so I'm going ahead and setting up what this is about, to discussing poetry textbooks, because it serves as an example of how poetical advice can be encouraging to young poets. All right, so the next thing I had to do was answer the question, how does it inform my research topic? Well, if my research topic is poetry textbooks, are they needed in poetry classrooms or are they not? Then this would be how it would be pertinent to my research. And it's saying that they are necessary because they're encouraging, they give lots of examples, they share workshop techniques. I know that this topic may not be as relevant to any of you, but this is sort of the main thing that I teach, and so it's easier for me to talk about stuff like this. So I hope that you're seeing how I'm constructing this annotation. I start out with John Drury, what he wrote. I go into the broad summary of it, and then I get a little bit more in detail with exactly what he's talking about, how he's talking about it. And then I come down and I say, okay, this is why this is relevant to what I'm talking about. This is why I want to use it in my paper, right? And then I keep going. So the next thing I have to answer is a quote. I need to put in a quote here from the article. So I'll go, a particularly helpful line can be found on page 6, where he states that, and I give my quotation, which again, I'm not going to make one up. I'm just going to pretend that that's a quotation. And then I'm going to cite it. So Drury 6, period. Note here that I don't have any period inside the quotation marks here. It comes after the in-text citation, okay? And for your in-text citation, all we need is the name, the last name of the author, and the page number. We don't need a comma here, just a space, and then the page number. If it's more than one author, you would put Drury and John 6. If it's 3 authors or more, you would put Drury and John et al. Okay. All right. And then, so there's my quote. So I've done that part. And then I'm going to come down here and wrap it up nicely so that I can move on to my next annotation. So what the best way to wrap it up in a nice sentence is just to go back and explain the quote and then wrap it around to, relate it to your entire topic. So I say, this emphasizes the importance of teaching poetry in academia. Okay, so not only does this reference back to my quote, but it sort of goes back to the broader picture of teaching poetry in academia, which is my topic. Okay, so let's count sentences. So we have 1, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm good for sentences. That's a really good brief annotation. And I'm good to move on to my next one. I have all of my parts. The author, check. What the article is about, check. How it informs my research or topic, check. A quote that I want to use in my paper that's an example of why it's relevant, check. And then a sentence that wraps it up, check. All right, and then you're good to go. So if you ever come to a point where you're not exactly sure where to start, use this as sort of a template. So if I'm going to do another article, say I'm going to do Mary Oliver's Rules of the Dance, okay, that's what I want to cite. and I don't really know quite where to start, I'll just come down and use this as a template. So I'll go Mary Oliver, comma, in her book, Rules of the Dance, discusses. Okay, and then I'll go into it from there. Don't be afraid to copy. Imitation is a lot of times how we learn how to do something. And if this is what you need to use to sort of frame all of your annotations, you're more than welcome to use it. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Please send me an email, reach out to me. I am available. I want to talk with you, and I want to do what I can to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success in this assignment. And remember that it does not have to be perfect to get your A or your B. As long as you're following the instructions, as long as you're reaching out to me, as long as we're in conversation, if you're struggling, you're going to be okay. Because this is not a course that emphasizes product and perfection. This is a course that emphasizes the process of learning. And when you learn, you mess up. For example, I play piano as a hobby, and I was kind of pecking at the keys last night, and I was having trouble reading the bass line because it's been a while, if we're honest. And my little girl looked up at me and made a face, and I looked down at her. I was like, "It's okay, you know, mommy's still learning. Mommy's still learning how to read the bass line. I've never been good at reading the bass line. Right hand I can do all day long, but left hand, and it's really hard for me. And so we mess up while we learn, and that's all right. So that's why I wanted this class to be more about figuring out the process of research before it actually matters in your career, in your major classes that are to come. This is the place to mess up, right? And I don't want it to count against you, because messing up is a part of learning. So feel free, all that being said, feel free to use this as a template if you need to create your own annotations. And I hope that it was helpful. Again, if you have any more questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in the modules. Have a great day, guys.